Record. Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm going to be your host. My name is Amar, and Sandeep Balakrishna is our. Oh, he's waving there. Yeah. So Sandeep Balakrishna is your.
Are you recording?
Yeah, I am recording. Okay. So Sandeep Balakrishna is your main speaker today. The tradition with webinars and any other speaking event is that you first claim that the speaker does not need an introduction and then proceed to give a detailed introduction. So I shall stick to tradition and give you a very short introduction to Sandeep. Sandeep Balakrishna is the chief editor and also the CEO of India Facts. He is also the author of two best-selling books. The first one is the translation of the immensely popular S.L. Bhairappa work called Avarana. This translation by Sandeep has undergone multiple reprints. The theme is a fascinating story of an interreligious marriage, with the narrative being, interspersed with elements of history and historical fiction. The second book by Sandeep, which is also the topic of our webinar today, is Tipu Sultan, the Tyrant of Mysore. The book typically profiles the rise and fall of Tipu, the very controversial Sultan of Mysore. The book serves two purposes really. First, it presents a very accurate picture of Tipu, the ruler, and how his religious outlook and fanaticism, if you could call it that, wreaked havoc in the territories of Mysore. Second, by presenting us a very contrasting picture to what we have been used to or to what we have been presented all these years, the book is a fantastic study in how history has been distorted and whitewashed in this country. We see that the tyrant has been eulogized as a freedom fighter and an anti-colonial warrior and so on. So that is as far as setting the context for the webinar. I believe the format is Sandeep speaks for 10-15 minutes, and following which we will open the floor for questions. And that should wrap up things for the day. So over to Sandeep.
Thank you. Thank you, Amar, for the kind introduction. And before we begin, I would like to thank everybody who took out their valuable time to hear me speak out here. So before I begin, I don't know how to do this. As an author, I'm supposed to show you the cover page of my book. So here goes. Is it visible?
Yeah, we can see.
All right. So as Amar said, rightly said, Tipu Sultan has been a controversial figure, and that controversy, from my studies while researching for the book, that controversy, I found that the controversy was largely manufactured by the Nehruvian history establishment. And before I begin any further, I would like to say that I'll be quite forthright and upfront about my views on this guy, on Tipu Sultan. The first thing one needs to remember, and I speak and I say this as a person who was born in this state and who grew up in this state, and who knows how Tipu was viewed even during my growing up years, and how the subsequent efforts to paint him in a different light came about. So to begin with, it is something that I mentioned in my book, that no Muslim family till recently, no Muslim family would name their son as Tipu or Tipu Sultan. So that should tell you a lot, coming from that community. That should tell you a lot as to his reputation, as to how he was viewed. Secondly, as I mentioned in my book, stray dogs in the region of Sakleshpur, which is where Tipu had a fort at Manjirabad, which is a scenic place, by the way. At Manjirabad and in places near Coorg, stray dogs are derogatorily named as Tipu. So this should set you the context of how Tipu is viewed, of how the memory of Tipu is preserved even in contemporary discourse and in the public mind. So to begin with, I'll give you a brief background as to how I came about writing this. For that, I'll read out from the introduction of my book. So the month is September 2006, and there was a seminar organized in Bangalore called Shikshan Bachao, or Save Education. So this was the title of a seminar in Bangalore. Inaugurating this seminar was the then Higher Education Minister of Karnataka, D.H. Shankaramurthy, who basically said that Tipu Sultan was a traitor to the Kannada language. Kannada, which was administrative language of the Mysore state under the Wadeyars, was replaced by Farsi by Tipu Sultan. He was an opponent of the Kannada language. We don't need to give him a place of respect in the history of Karnataka. It's a mistake to glorify him. Indeed, it is typical to glorify Akbar, Aurangzeb, and Tipu as patriots in national history. Alexander and Akbar are glorified with a great suffix. Respect and honor are given to those who embarked on a conquest of our nation and to those who defeated our own people. Instead, our textbooks need to have lessons on people who made positive contributions for the nation. The lives of people like Sir M. Vishweshwaraya and Maharaja Krishna Wadeyar IV, who developed the state, must be included in our history textbooks. What is now happening is a perversion of history. So this, I've read out the statement made by D.H. Shankaramurthy, the then education minister. So this statement was enough for the usual brigade of defenders of tyrants and mass murderers in history who erupted in a cacophony. This brigade suddenly became fanatical devotees of Tipu. Most of them, however, were petty eminences in the world of literature who attribute worship-worthy qualities to Tipu Sultan. So in the forefront was a Gnanpith awardee Girish Karnad, who posed as if he had taken a personal contract of defending Tipu and embarked on a campaign to defend him. So what followed this was a series of debates in a newspaper then edited by Vishweshwar Bhatt called Vijay Karnataka. So rebuttals, counter rebuttals from both sides began to happen, and then subsequently the evidence was overwhelmingly against Tipu Sultan. So with this background, and then this whole Tipu as a hero keeps resurfacing every now and then in Karnataka at least, and in some cases on the national stage as well. So in order to kind of put an end to all this, I began to slowly research on what this guy's legacy actually was. To my the very first book I kind of came across was a publication by Voice of India, which is actually a collection of essays written by various historians, journalists, etc. It's called Tipu Sultan, Villain or Hero. But then I just kind of left it at that. And a couple of years after that, my good friend, who is now the member of parliament and a former journalist, Pratap Simha, he wrote a book on Tipu Sultan in Kannada. So that is when again a controversy on Tipu erupted. So I'm like, okay, I kind of renewed my interest in this guy and began a serious study. And then I realized there's enormous material on this guy. I mean, if you want to sit and study, you can write at least an independent volume on Tipu Sultan's deeds and his invasions and his tyranny just in the Malabar region alone in Kerala. This is a kind of documentation that is still available. And so as I started researching, I had two things in mind: whether to make it like a academic or a semi-academic work, or to make it like a work of popular history, which is a genre that is still nascent in India. Popular history is basically without distorting anything, but making it more accessible and readable to the general public. So, which is a format I have adopted in my. So, in all my studies, I can say with utmost confidence that there is not a single redeeming quality that, let alone Tipu being a hero, there is not a single redeeming quality that you can defend Tipu Sultan on. So whatever the exceptions that are cited, like for example, his patronage to the Sringeri temple and his whatever donations and land grants to the Shiva temple in Nanjangud, or for example, his donations to the temple and Ranganatha Swami temple in Srirangpatna, they are exceptions, not the rule. According to one estimate, and I mentioned this in the book, throughout South India, at least in the dominions that Tipu was ruling, there were only 2 functioning Hindu temples. This is recorded in one of the gazettes by, I think, Rice, the British ICS administrative official. And then, more importantly, more than Hyder Ali, his father. Hyder Ali was a good administrator, but then by the time Tipu left the throne of Mysore, he had reduced Hyder Ali's army by at least 50%, and he had almost emptied it. And for all his prowess as a tiger of Mysore, etc., Tipu Sultan had won exactly 1 or 2 battles against the British. So there's this great myth that Tipu Sultan was a great freedom fighter, but what should be remembered is that India was not yet a British colony. The East India Company, the British East India Company, it was still fighting for political control of India. So it is therefore absurd to state that when the entire India was not yet politically unified, it is really absurd to call Tipu a freedom fighter because he fought against the British. It was a military battle for supremacy. So Tipu Sultan was, even if he had successfully driven out the British, ended their power in India, he would not have been called a pan-Indian leader. So this is other myths that I seek to dispel in this book. And then as to the tyranny, as to Tipu's tyranny, I will give a small sample of this by reading out from my book again. All right, this is from chapter 15. If Aurangzeb was the most fanatical Muslim king who reigned on the Mughal throne in Delhi at the start of the 18th century, his counterpart, who matched him both in bigotry and cruelty in South India at the close of the same century, was Tipu Sultan. Aurangzeb inflicted untold atrocities on Hindus, their way of life, their traditions, and their places of worship over a long period of 50 years. However, when we recall that Tipu inflicted the same, if not greater, kind of barbarism on Hindus within just 17 years, we realize the breadth and depth of his religious zealotry. Aurangzeb had almost all of India as the playground for his fanatical cruelty. Hindus in Delhi, Agra, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Kashmir, Punjab, and Haryana bore the extremities of his fanaticism. However, Tipu held sway over large parts of Karnataka, a few regions in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh. Within this comparatively small area, he managed to foist every kind of brutality imaginable in such a short span of time, that is just 17 years. His atrocities were not limited to the lives of Hindus, it was all pervasive. It targeted their traditions, places of worship, society, and women. The British historian Lewis Rice, who wrote the history of Mysore and Coorg, he says how in the vast empire of Tipu Sultan on the eve of his death, there were only 2 Hindu temples having daily pujas within the Srirangapattanam fortress. It is only for the satisfaction of the Brahmin astrologers who used to study his horoscope that Tipu Sultan had spared even those 2 temples. The entire wealth of every Hindu temple was confiscated before 1790 itself, mainly to make up for the revenue loss due to the total prohibition in the country. Equally, M.H. Gopal, he does an economic study of Tipu Sultan's condition rule in Mysore. He says that Musalmans were exempted from paying the house tax and taxes on grain and other goods meant for their personal use and not for trade. Christians were seized and deported to the capital, and their property was confiscated. Converts to Islam were given concessions such as exemption for taxes, etc. Tipu removed Hindus from all administrative posts and replaced them with Musalmans, with the exception of Diwan Purnaya. So therefore, another change was the introduction of Persian or Farsi as the medium of accounts in the revenue department. It was so far the practice in Mysore to make out the revenue accounts in Kannada, the fair copies of which were communicated to Amildars who had them translated into Marathi. And then we have Tipu's barbaric raid on the Malabar, which we have already seen in some detail. There is no atrocity that he didn't commit on the Hindus there, no measure for the rivers of Hindu blood he shed, and no limits to the cruelties he inflicted. It is worth recalling William Logan's list of Hindu temples that Tipu destroyed in Malabar. So this is just a small sample. I mean, you can read the book for the complete details. And so this, I mean, I've tried to give you the basic outline as to the basic nature of this guy. Tipu Sultan, it was also diagnosed that he was not a normal guy, in the sense that he was possessed with extreme fanaticism, religious fanaticism. He would often have dreams in which the prophet would come and ask him to convert the whole of India into the fold of Islam. And this zeal translated not only into physical harm, into physical barbarity, but it also extended to bizarre things like Tipu devised his own calendar, and he gave all kinds of names to the years. 2 years, instead of calling it 7, say for example 2001, he would give it some name which was taken out from either the Quran or the Hadith. He changed the names of the currency, he changed the units of measurement, he changed the units of distance. So, and the reasoning behind all this change was Islam. And then all the slaves, all the prisoners that he captured during his raids, etc., he transported them forcibly, imprisoned them, and those that didn't get converted forcibly were either killed or tortured to death. That's number one. And number two, those who agreed to convert became members of his private army. He had an armed militia of his own called the Ahmadi force. Lots of these guys were his prisoners who were forcibly later converted. Now, to come back to the origin and rise of Tipu Sultan, it's quite obvious that there could have been no Tipu without Hyder Ali. Now, for about nearly 400 years, the state of Mysore, which broke away after the fall of the Vijayanagara Empire, it was a feudatory of the Vijayanagara Empire. So the state of Mysore, which was ruled by the Wadayars for so many years, was actually usurped by Hyder Ali. And it was Hyder Ali's way of, repaying the trust imposed in him by the Wadayar family, by the Wadayar dynasty. So not only did he do that, but he imprisoned the Dalwai or the commander-in-chief of the Mysore army, and then threw the royal family into prison, and then took over the reins of the Mysore Empire. He also expanded the Mysore Empire, conducted a series of raids, etc. And then the most important fact is that Hyder Ali did not appoint Tipu Sultan as a successor. In fact, in the very early years of Tipu Sultan's, say, childhood or his teenage years, Hyder Ali imposed a very humiliating punishment on Tipu Sultan. He made him write a groveling letter saying that, "Daddy, I'm so sorry, I will not do this again. Please forgive me." And then he was also flogged in public with, I think, 50 or 100 lashes. And Hyder Ali did not trust Tipu with any important position, either in the military or in the administration. So it is only by luck and clever scheming on the part of Diwan Purnaya and a couple of other courtiers that Tipu Sultan was installed on the throne of Mysore as a sultan. So far we've seen his raids, we've seen his so-called prowess against the British, uh, Tipu basically, every time he was confronted with a Maratha army, he lost. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you, Sandeep. We can hear you.
Yeah. So there is no instance where he successfully fought any major power during his time and lost, including the British, except for the Battle of Mangalore, where he outnumbered, where he won over the British due to the sheer force of numbers. So the British had to sign the Treaty of Mangalore, and then for 17 long years, he kept breaking the treaty until the British could take it no longer. And then, meanwhile, basically, over the course of his years, it was since 1785, over the course of his 17-year-old rule, there was no chieftain, there was no king, there was no minor feudatory that he did not piss off, that he did not instigate and basically piss off.
Sandeep, could you also, I'm so sorry to interrupt, could you also switch on your lights? It's a little dark on your side.
The light is on. Maybe I think my back is to a light. Is this better?
Slightly. Perhaps the white wall provides a contrast, but yeah, this is slightly better.
This is better?
Well, it's slightly better, but not particularly better. But I guess if the light is on, we can, carry on.
Hang on. Is this better?
Not particularly.
Is this better?
Not particularly.
Is this better?
No, not particularly, but yeah.
Now?
Slightly.
Now?
Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that.
Leave it at this, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so where was I? Yeah, so there was no king, no minor or major king that he didn't piss off. In fact, for all his talk about Tipu being the tiger of Mysore, a small band of Malabar Nayaks successfully repelled him and made him retreat not once but twice. In a span of just 6 months, Tipu had to beat retreats twice. So this nails the myth about Tipu being this tiger of Mysore. Am I visible?
Yeah, you are visible. It is just that it's quite dark, but yeah, we can see.
Yeah, so that nails the myth of him being this tiger of Mysore. Now to just to expand a little bit more on how this tiger of Mysore thing came about. This was a mischief that can be attributed to this 70s writer called Bhagwan S. Gidwani. He was a guy who wrote a very bad novel, historically inaccurate novel titled Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore. So that book was a complete fabrication of Tipu. Perhaps, I mean, there's a beautiful book review written, I think, in the mid-70s in Hindustan Times, exposing this novel, where he says that Bhagwan Gidwani's Tipu Sultan bears no resemblance to the historic Tipu Sultan. It's perhaps a reflection of the author's blind admiration for Tipu Sultan's imaginary heroism. But then that book became widely acclaimed due to the prevailing political climate of that time. And then ever since, that label has stuck to him. So this same myth was repeated, re-repeated, and kept and was perpetuated even as late as maybe the late 90s or the early 2000s by Girish Karnad in his play named Tipu in a Kanasugulu, or the Dreams of Tipu Sultan, where again Girish Karnad dons the role of Tipu Sultan, so to say, gets under his skin, and goes on in elaborate soliloquies where he kind of reflects his own image of Tipu Sultan. I mean, it's very bizarre. It's a very bizarre play to say the least. So this is how the whole myth of Tipu got created. Now we have also seen, we've also spoken about the myth of how he was not a freedom fighter, contrary to popular perception. Now I'll address one last point and then open the floor for questions. Now there's also this that Tipu was this great patriot. If he was such a great patriot, and if he was such a great integrator, national integrator. Amar, there's some disturbance. Can you mute? Right, thanks. So that he was this great patriot. The fact is that Tipu directly and indirectly collaborated with several foreign powers. The chief of them being he invited a guy called Zaman Shah, who was ruling from Afghanistan. He invited him to wage a war, to wage a jihad against India, so that they could bring the entire whole of Hindustan under the Islamic fold, and that they could share territory and the spoils of war, and that how he would accept Zaman Shah as a supreme sultan. If that is one guy that he collaborated, he also collaborated with the French, who were also vying for political and economic supremacy at that time with the British. So because there was this long-standing enmity with the British and Tipu, he naturally veered towards their adversaries, the French. And then he also wrote to the Caliph, the Khalifa in Turkey, to help and wage a war, to wage a jihad against India. So this pretty much kind of sums up his role as this great patriot. So to conclude this, as I said in the beginning, through my entire research of writing this book, there is not a single redeeming quality that you can base that you can defend Tipu Sultan on any ground as either being a great patriot or a freedom fighter, which is meaningless, or as a tolerant or a secular guy, or someone who cared for Hindus, or someone who did a lot for Hindus. So this Tipu, again, the whole narrative on Tipu is it pretty much mirrors that of the narrative of the medieval Muslim rule in India. But then Tipu's narrative, the pro-Tipu narrative, has picked up steam in the past few years because after Babur, Aurangzeb, etc., were all comprehensively demolished. Their myths were broken. He is seen as the last kind of a guy for the secular or the Nehru history establishment to hold on to as the last straw. With that, I think I come to a close of my talk, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. That was a pretty good overview of the book and of Tipu, the person. If I'm not wrong, the correct way to ask questions right now is to ping us on the chat, and we would enable you to ask the question. We have two questions now, both of them from Yogini. First one is about Tipu's contribution to rocketry in India, or the development of rocketry.
Okay.
And the second one is how many temples did Tipu really save? Liberals always quote his legacy as the protector of temples.
Yeah, so I think the first question, the rocket question, the rocket technology, that comes from, that's again another oft-quoted myth that Tipu was this great military and engineering innovator. But the fact is that apart from inheriting his father's army and the existing armies of his feudatories and the existing army of the Mysore military force, Tipu imported a lot of missile technology and rocket technology primarily from the French. So just like how the Indian Army imports from various countries, its defense equipment, etc., from various countries. Tipu didn't really commission any new weaponry or manufacturing or missile technology. So I mean, importing something from somewhere else and using it in your whatever warfare doesn't make you an innovator of any sort. I hope that answers your question. What was the second question?
How many temples did Tipu really destroy?
Well, the accounts vary. There's been a lot of research done. I mean, I just read out.
I'm sorry, the question is flipped. I believe the question is, how many temples did Tipu really save?
Tipu really save?
Yes.
To my knowledge, none. He left a few temples untouched, mainly because of political reasons.
Right. So the next question is from Jayant. Let me see if we could unmute him so he could ask the question himself. Jayant, can you hear us? Jayant? All right, so I have his question, so I'll ask it myself. What was the reason behind Tipu's cordial relations with Sringeri?
Sringeri, yeah, I have dealt with this precise question in I've devoted an entire chapter to this, but just to summarize that, it was at the time after the third Anglo-Mysore war, where Tipu was severely beaten and he had to cough up a lot of money, up to some 32 lakh rupees in those days. And then half of his territory was divided between the British and the Marathas and other people and other forces. And two of his sons were taken as hostages until he repaid that loan. So by then he had realized that his temple destruction spree and his selective targeting of only Hindu kings. He realized that he had overplayed his hand with the serial kind of oppression of Hindus and constant targeted attacks of Hindus. So to placate Hindus, he made these land grants and donations and a lot of gifts and jewelry, etc., to the Sringeri people. It was more political in nature than owing out of a genuine religious tolerance. In fact, you can look at my chapter.
Oh, you could also just say read my book. That is also a legitimate answer, I believe.
No, you can read chapter 15, which is the truth about Tipu's gifts to Hindu temples.
Right. Chapter 15.
Chapter 15, yeah.
Right. The next question would be from, let me quickly scroll down here. Could you specify the name of some temples destroyed by Tipu? This is by Ritika Sharma.
Yeah, lots of them actually. In fact, if you turn right on the Bangalore to Mysore highway, if you turn right to enter Srirangapatnam, you will see a huge mosque which is painted in white, which has a vast kind of really large compound inside which the mosque is located. That is actually the site of a destroyed Hanuman temple.
Right.
Even if you look at the walls from the outside, it is very clear that it was a former temple.
Right.
So if that's not enough, I have given a table which lists some of the prominent temples destroyed just in the Malabar region.
Right.
In Calicut, in the Thali district, in Tiruvannur, Varakkal, Puttur, Govindapuram, Keraladeeshwaran temple, Tirunvaya, Trikkavu, Tirthala, Panniyur temple, Maranelira, Perumparappu, Mannur, Mamiyur, Guruvayur temple. He didn't manage to destroy it, but he did succeed in desecrating it. And the Krishna idol inside the temple had to be transported away to a safe location. And then Perumanam, there's a famous temple there. Then there's a famous temple in Shiva. There's a Jain temple he destroyed in Palagat. Then there's a Vengara temple in Aranadu. So you can look at that. The entire list is given in that in the chapter titled "A Temple Destroyer Par Excellence."
Right. And the next question would be, I believe we're getting more questions than we can answer. From Yugal. Let me see if we could get Yugal on the line.
Amar, there is a slight echo.
Yugal, can you hear us? Yugal?
Yugal, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay.
Anyway, I'll read out the question. Yesterday, an article published in the Hindu says Tipu provided financial assistance to Sringeri Mutt invaded by Marathas and donated 10,000 coins to Sri Kanteshwara temple. The temple also talks about other gifts to some other temples. The article also talks about his other gifts to some other temples. What is your view on it? I suppose you.
I believe I've already answered that, but just to answer the question on the Sri Kanteshwara temple in Nanjangud, that temple has, I think, a land grant or some kind of an inscription by Tipu, which addresses him as Hakim Nanjunda, meaning Hakim is a doctor. Apparently, it came about because Tipu was suffering from one of these prolonged diseases, some sort of an epidemic or an illness. And so basically the Hindu astrologers and other holy men in his court, they advised him to pray to Nanjundeshwara as a method of cure. And now, a guy who's seriously ill will do anything to get well. So that's when he got cured of that. And then he made a grant as a measure of thanks. So this is the other thing. This is the other thing, taking out these stray incidents of exception and giving it as a general assessment of his overall character and life.
Right. So, moving on, the next question is from Harikiran. Did my dear friend Romila Thapar sanitize him? How much did she deal with him in her books?
I have not really read what Romila Thapar has written about Tipu.
Read Sandeep Balakrishna's books instead of Romila Thapar's books. I believe there's another question from Gautam. Let me see if Gautam, could you unmute yourself and ask the question yourself? No, that doesn't look like it's happening. Okay, his mic is not working. So let me ask his question.
No mic or something.
Yeah. Purnaya, Gautam's question. Purnaya was portrayed as a shrewd and intelligent aide. How instrumental was he in installing Tipu?
Purnaya was?
1 second. Purnaya was portrayed as a shrewd and intelligent aide. How instrumental was he in installing Tipu?
In extolling Tipu?
In installing Tipu on the throne.
Purnaya was fairly instrumental in installing Tipu as the Sultan. And yes, he was a shrewd and cunning kind of a minister and a diwan to Tipu Sultan. But then again, Purnaya's legacy is mixed, in the sense that he did a lot of, as a Hindu Brahmin, he did a lot of he kind of shielded a lot of Hindus from Tipu's savagery, but at the same time, he also used his political clout to settle his own scores with other Hindus. The legacy of Purnaya is pretty mixed. You can't, kind of pinpoint his legacy as either really good or really evil.
Right. So the next question is from Nitish about what happened to all the gold he looted. Have they been taken away by the East India Company or the British?
Well, I really don't know.
Right. So let me go to the next question, which was a very interesting question. When by Pushkar Lake, do you want to unmute yourself and try asking the question yourself, Pushkar, or should I read it out? Pushkar?
Hello.
Hi, yeah, go ahead.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Hello.
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
So my question is, when we say that the wars between Tipu, Sultan and British were just power struggles, some people may argue that if this is the case, then the wars between Marathas and British were no different than just power struggles. Is this the case, or is there a difference?
Well, this is a very good question. Yes, the wars between Marathas and the British were also equally cases of power struggle, but then nobody has painted the Marathas as freedom fighters, seeking to drive out the British for India and unifying it or something. But Tipu Sultan is falsely portrayed as a freedom fighter and a great unifier of India. This is the key difference.
Okay.
Okay, the next question, also an interesting question, from Arvind Ganesh. Arvind, do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. I think some 10 years back, I visited the Neelakanteshwar temple. At that time, the tourist guide, he told me that in that temple, on every Friday, they used to do a archana for Tipu, for Tipu's name. And that practice is still being followed. He also told me that the archana is being done as a symbolic gesture, for the secularism or something like that.
Well, I think you're referring to this practice in somewhere near Mookambika in Kollur, right?
No. Neelakanteshwar temple.
Neelakanteshwara in Nanjangud.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same answer I gave you, right? I believe I've already answered this question.
No, first of all, that information is it true or?
The secularism bit is a thing invented by your ASI guy who would have been coached to give out this narrative.
Okay, but that archana, it is being done, or it is just, or is it just a false narrative?
No, the secularism narrative is the made up narrative, but because Tipu did give a grant and some amount of money to the Nanjangud temple, they do an archana in his name. What
was the other temple you were referring to?
There is a temple near Kollur Mookambika. It's either in Kollur or near one of the villages or towns nearby Kollur.
Okay, but there are numerous donors for the temples, right? Why they have to single out Tipu alone?
Well, I mean, a royal donation is always takes precedence over others, right?
But there are some olden temples also which have also received royal donations from various kings. Archana in those temples, archana is not being done for their names.
Yeah, so which is precisely the result of why the Hindu temples are in the state they are in.
Yeah.
The largest Hindu society hasn't cared to maintain its own heritage and traditions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. You have a state where it declared state of affairs where it declared atheist, like Bargur Ramachandrappa is made to who doesn't believe in God, who doesn't believe in Hinduism, who's a declared atheist and an openly anti-Hindu guy. He's declared it as much. He is made to inaugurate the traditional Chamundeshwari temple in Mysore for the Dasara. So it's no surprise that your earlier royal temples that receive royal patronages don't mention the names of the king.
Okay, that's a good answer. So next one is from Aparna. Aparna, do you want to ask your question? You can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandeep, for a very informative, little thing about your book. Though we've all read it, but it was nice to hear some facts from you. I just wanted to ask that you have drawn widely from his letters and his own writings, Tipu Sultan's own writings, which kind of are proof of his treachery and the acts which need not be glorified, and much like Aurangzeb. So it always amazes me that why do because you've done so much of research, what do you think in your view armies or the liberals, why do they run from facts? I mean, it's all there in his own letters. So do they fear the truth, or are they solely driven by only a political agenda? I mean, is nothing else on their mind at all?
It's partly both. It's partly the colonial narrative that they have kind of amplified and perfected it to a fine art, and partly the rootedness in the Marxist ideology.
So is there, I mean, I know your website is doing things to counter this narrative, but apart from this, how do we ensure that facts like these are out in the public domain for everybody to know, everybody to learn? And because depend on the government for everything, to wait for the NCRT to change the books and all that's going to take time. So in your view, how do we spread the truth?
Well, the internet is a good friend. Use it wisely, use it thoroughly.
Okay.
And more importantly, unless and until the official textbooks are changed, tell you, and I'll say this pretty frankly, and there's nothing to hide in this, until the school textbooks are not changed, until they're changed, you tell your children that, you read this history only to score marks in your exams, but this is a real history.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that tip. I have children, so I'll tell them that.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, no more questions? Amar, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I was muted and I was trying to talk. Anyway, the next question is from Robert Rosario, and he has a question on the captivity of Kannada Christians.
Of Kannada Christians, yes.
Yeah, he can probably, if he has a specific question, unmute himself and ask the question. Robert?
Yeah. Robert, you can unmute yourself, yeah?
Yeah. Hi, Sandeep. Robert Rosario.
Hi, good.
My specific question. The Kannada Christians have been held captive by Tipu Sultan and taken to Srirangapatnam. Yeah. What I want to know is whether it was religious hatredness or because Christians supported British, he had some political reasons to do that.
This is a good question. So to answer this in a little bit of detail, it was during his raid against Mangalore and Nagara or Shimoga, that general region, the Unnavara, Mangalore, that belt. So the accounts vary, the numbers vary, but then between 40 or 60 to 60,000 Christians to about nearly 90,000 Christians. The numbers vary, but it's a significant amount. He held them captive, and anybody in his eyes who was not a Muslim was an infidel, was a kafir. So in all his letters which were recovered after his death, after the final battle of with the British and their allies and the Marathas and Nizam and the rest of them. So once the fort of Srirangapatna fell and Tipu was in the battle, they recovered all the letters that he had written. And there he doesn't refer to them as, Christian, British political whatever, or Englishmen or whatever. He calls them as Christian infidels. He addresses them as Christian infidels who have to be thrown out of India and cleansed. This country should be cleansed from them or stuff like that. So you're right. I mean, it was more driven out of religious bigotry than political reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Robert. The next question is from Shambhu Nashipuri. Shambhu, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Thanks, Amar, and hi, Sandeep. I know there is. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So we just we've been talking about there is so much of legacy built around Tipu Sultan. How do we negate that? One way is to teach the next generation the right history. But then we can also do these things like we have a Tipu Express which runs from Bangalore to Mysore. So
Yeah.
can we have a petition to Indian Railways saying that okay, so Tipu need not have a train. So it's they're just glorifying a false hero. So I think that would also be a good start.
It could be. I mean, there was some opposition to setting up the Tipu University near Srirangapatna.
Yeah.
Somewhere in 2011, the proposal was floated, and there's a lot of opposition. Though I haven't followed up on the progress of that. But then, yeah, I mean, if you don't want to preserve a false legacy, a deplorable legacy like how Aurangzeb Road was recently changed, maybe this could be a good step.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks Sandeep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amar.
Yeah, you're welcome. Amar, you have muted yourself again.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The next question is from Ritika Sharma. Ritika, do you want to ask the question yourself? Or shall I read them out?
Hello.
Yeah, hello, we can hear you.
I want to ask a question. I'm married to a Kannadiga. He's from Mangalore. We are from Surat. So I was quite inquisitive about the Mangalore Treaty. Could you please specify more on that? What exactly is the treaty, and how could Tipu Sultan manage to break the treaty for 17 years with British?
No, he didn't exactly break the Treaty of Mangalore for 17 years. But then, okay, let me read out the Mangalore Treaty. Wait.
Sandeep, this is where you say, read my book.
Okay, read my book. So essentially, the British surrendered to Tipu because he was outnumbered. I mean, because they were outnumbered, and then he took all of them captive, etc. To cut a long story short, the treaty basically said no interference, no taking of prisoners, no harming each other's allies, and no infringement on territories, etc. So that was what was agreed upon. And then in between, there was a change in the presidency in Madras, which was where the East India Company had its base in South India. So, but then slowly Tipu began to not only infringe, but he started harassing, for example, the Raja of Coorg, who was allied to the British, and the Nayars, Raman Nair and other Nair kings, chieftains in the Malabar, and one ruler in Cochin, which was, I think, belonging to the Travancore belt. Okay? So some of these series of infringements of this treaty, Tipu didn't basically give a damn, because his savagery of his raids in Malabar and Coorg, it had emboldened him. Basically, he thought that I've defeated the British. They have kind of come down a step, and there is nobody to beat me.
Right.
So I can do what I want. So to put it in very plain language.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
Thank you.
So the British also didn't take him too seriously, but then slowly, I mean, their patience also ran out with, numerous complaints coming in from our Hindu kings as well. A very you can read Kannada. A very interesting book on this subject is a book named Chikkavira Rajendra by Masti Venkatesha Iyengar. So it's a very rewarding work. It's a historical work that deals with all these things.
Chikkavira Rajendra.
Yeah.
All right. Also, could you tell us if there are any British records of Tipu Sultan and what his barbarity and what exactly did he do?
Lots of them actually, not only British records, there are records written by some German missionary travelers, some Dutch missionaries, and of course British chronicles, for example by Lewis Rice, and then the Mysore Gazette, then the Malabar Manual by William Logan. In fact, if you consult the archives at Fort William and in Calcutta and Fort St. George archives in Madras, you'll find a lot of primary source material that deals with the first-hand accounts of Tipu of those days.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritika. The next question, or rather a suggestion, is from Harikiran. Since Pratap is from Mysore, a beginning can be made if you write to him. This, I believe, is on the question of the Tipu Express.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent suggestion, and if somebody can take the lead and kind of float a petition or something and write to him, a good beginning can be made.
All right. So I believe we are coming towards the end of the webinar today. We have about 3 minutes left. So I'll quickly read out the last 1 or 2 questions, and if you could answer, that should wind up proceedings for the day. Question is from Vikram. Any insights on where we are with respect to correcting NCERT textbooks? Has this been taken up by HRD ministry or not even an agenda yet?
I am not in government, so I'm not in a position to answer that.
Hello, I have a question. Sandeep, can you hear me?
Yes, Omindra. Yes, Omindra.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
Has your book been translated into Hindi?
As far as my knowledge goes, no, it has not yet been translated.
Are we doing something about that?
I don't know. I mean, you want to translate it yourself?
I can sit down to do that. Yes. I'll take a lot of time because my hands are full. But if you want me to investigate this further, then we can do this. Because you see that the thing is this: in North India, nobody cares about Tipu being a tyrant. Here, the entire narrative is about Tipu being a patriot.
Okay. So
we have to, if we have to have a critical mass where we want to go for PIL, then we want to, dislodge this person from the status of a patriot to a bigot, then we have to have that kind of awareness.
That's an excellent suggestion. I mean, if you can write to me offline on what you have in mind exactly, we could look at taking it forward.
Okay, so that's a suggestion for a Hindi.
No, it's a simple translation in Hindi.
Sure.
Your book is well researched. It has been.
Yeah.
And I think something.
Go ahead, please.
Besides the Hindi translation, Sandeep, we have also to go think in terms of local awareness. I am sure you are. I really don't know if you are doing it on the local level. But if we go to the Mathadhishas and if we go to our Sadhu Samaj and tell them about the reality of this man, then we generate that kind of awareness about the ill deeds of this man. Since the local MPs also from the BJP, then only we can think of reversing the trend of this man being worshipped as a patriot. So a lot of groundwork has to be done.
Absolutely, it's a suggestion well received. if you can kind of, write me an email offline, we can discuss it in more detail.
Done. I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm afraid we've run out of our time. It is about 8:30 now. I'm going to close proceedings with one last question from Sundar. In fact, I'm going to add something to the question myself and ask, make that a double this thing here. Sundar's question is, can you recommend an authentic book on the Vijayanagara Empire? And my own listening to that is, what are your next projects after Tipu and Tyrant?
Amar, your voice was breaking in between.
No, so I was saying we've run out of time at the moment, so I'm afraid we'll have to close proceedings. But we would like to end with one final question from Sundar. And to Sundar's question, I would also like to add my own addendum if you can. Sundar's question is, can you recommend an authentic book on the Vijayanagara Empire? And my addition to that is, are you writing a book yourself on the Vijayanagara Empire, or are you working on any other books at the moment?
I am not writing a book on Vijayanagara Empire, but 2 other books on which should be out in a year's time. You will know when it comes out.
Oh, excellent. So I am, any hints? Literature, history, popular fiction?
One is a translation, the other is a biography.
Excellent. So we, all of us eagerly look forward to those 2 works coming out, and hopefully we'll have a couple of more webinars for those 2 books as well. So I'm afraid we've run out of time. In fact, 3-4 minutes over our allotted time. So with that, I would like to close proceedings and end this webinar. Thank you, everyone. And
thank you, Amar. And thanks, everyone, for showing the patience and restraint to listen to me.
Yeah, and a quick add-on, the next webinar is on the 12th October. This is by the main speaker, that will be Michel Danino, who is, as you all know, a very good historian and a very interesting person to talk to. So see you all next time. Thank you very much.